Hinton claims excessive force used by police during his arrest resulted in him having physical injuries. He also focused on this: Hamilton County deputies packing the room for his arraignment on May 3rd.
Good morning, Mr. Hinton.
Hinton claims that coordinated presence was, quote, clearly intended to intimidate.
Rodney Hinton Jr. stood in the courtroom, shackled and silent. 30 officers packed the room, most of them white, arms folded, eyes fixed on him. The tension? You could cut it with a knife. But that wasn't the first moment this story made people uncomfortable. Just one day earlier, Rodney had watched the body cam footage of his only son, 18-year-old Ryan Hinton, being chased, gunned down, and left to bleed by Cincinnati police. No warning, no second chances, just 5 bullets, and a dead teenager in the street. 2 hours later, a deputy lay dead in a crosswalk, and Rodney was behind the wheel. Some said it was revenge, others called it grief, but the law called it murder. But what came next, in court, online, and across the city, would ignite something deeper. Questions about justice, race, the right to mourn, and the right to retaliate, and whether Rodney Hinton was really out for blood or just broken beyond repair.
Prosecutors say Hinton targeted Deputy Henderson after watching body camera video showing a Cincinnati police officer shooting and killing his son. Authorities say 18-year-old Ryan Hinton was pointing a gun at an officer. These protesters say they didn't see one in the footage.
They don't see Ryan being shot down unnecessarily as being what caused Rodney to respond in the way that he did.
But before we begin, if you find this video interesting, please give it a like at the end and tell me what you think about the case. It really helps the channel. And don't forget to subscribe for more. Thank you. The afternoon was tense, with sirens wailing through the quiet streets of East Price Hill. On May 1st, 2025, Cincinnati police responded to reports of a stolen Kia tracking the vehicle's GPS to a condo complex. As officers approached, they saw Ryan Hinton, just 18 years old, exit the car. What happened next would set off a tragic chain of events, leaving one officer dead and the city gripped by shock. Ryan didn't hesitate. He bolted, running fast and hard with a gun in his hand. The officers in pursuit shouted commands. "He's got a gun!" one of them called, his voice frantic as he saw Ryan stumble, drop the weapon, then scramble to pick it up. In the blur of motion, it was unclear whether Ryan was raising the gun towards the officers or simply trying to regain control of it. But for the officer who was chasing him, the decision was already made. With Ryan still in motion, the officer fired. 5 shots rang out in quick succession, each one echoing off the buildings nearby. Ryan collapsed, struck by all 5 rounds. The officers approached cautiously, but the outcome was inevitable. Ryan was dead. The body camera footage, shaky and unclear, left room for uncertainty. The officer involved claimed he had seen Ryan point the gun at him, though the video didn't capture the exact moment clearly enough to confirm it.
He's got a gun! He's got a gun on your right! On your right!
In a matter of seconds. It all began with a stolen vehicle, a Kia from Edgewood, Kentucky. GPS tracking led the investigation here, a condo complex in East Price Hill. Officers arrived, and Chief Terry Thiegy explains what happened next.
All 4 individuals get out and start running.
On your right! On your right!
Some in different directions. So officers decide which individual they're going to pursue. One officer decides to pursue the individual who we now know had a firearm in his hand.
At some point, the person with the gun slips.
They heard the metal from the firearm hit the concrete. This individual gets up, still has the firearm in his hand, and continues to run through the dumpster.
Despite the blurry footage, Cincinnati's police chief, Teresa Thiegy, explained the officer's actions, saying he feared for his life in that split second. The officer acted based on what he believed was an imminent threat, she said. The police department stood by its decision, calling the officer's response justified. But for those watching from the outside, it wasn't so clear. Ryan, a young man who had just crossed into adulthood, had been involved in a stolen car chase. Yes, and yes, he had a gun, but he hadn't fired it at the officers. Was that enough to justify the officer taking a life? Many asked. The answer, for some, was not so straightforward.
According to Cincinnati Police Chief Teresa Thigi, officers had just seconds to respond to the threat. Body camera footage that we reviewed earlier during a press conference backs that up. The time between when officers first arrived on scene Thursday and the moment shots were fired is just 6 seconds.
So for them to process and determine a different course of action, I think, is unreasonable.
Cincinnati Police Chief Teresa Thigi says all 4 suspects ran into the woods in different directions when 2 officers rolled up to the stolen car. One officer chased the armed suspect, the other officer a different suspect.
And that'll be significant here in a moment.
Within seconds of running, the armed suspect falls. The officer chasing him reports seeing a gun.
This individual gets up, still has the firearm in his hand, and continues to run through the dumpsters.
On the other side of the dumpster is the other officer chasing a different suspect.
He's got a gun. He's got a gun on your right. On your right.
According to police interviews, that officer said the armed suspect emerged from the dumpsters pointing a gun at him.
And he felt threatened for his life, and that's why he discharged his firearm.
Chief Thigi says the officer fired off 4 or 5 shots, hitting the armed suspect twice. Police attempted first aid, but the person later died.
This is where we have to go to the state of mind of the officer at the time. What are they seeing, feeling, hearing? If they feel like their life or somebody else's life is in danger, they have a responsibility to stop that threat.
The 2 suspects in custody were arraigned Friday morning. 18-year-old Jarrell Austin and 19-year-old DeAnthony Bullocks face charges of receiving stolen property and obstructing official business.
When this happens, the outcome is almost always tragic. No one wins, and everyone involved is affected.
Court records show Austin was already facing 4 other charges for a shooting back in October. As for Bullocks, his juvenile court records show he was convicted of felonies and sentenced twice to custody in the Department of Youth Services. Chief Thigi says officers found a second gun inside the stolen car. I also asked her about that 4 suspects still at large tonight. She says police are still searching for him.
In the hours following Ryan's death, Rodney Hinton Jr. sat in a small room, his eyes glued to the screen. His heart was heavy as he watched the footage, every frame a painful reminder of what had just happened. There was no way to reverse time, no way to bring his son back. He had already heard the police chief explain the justification. But to Rodney, a father who had just seen his son's life end in a chaotic blur of gunfire, the words felt hollow. Rodney's grief was immediate, raw, and uncontrollable. He watched as his son's life was reduced to a few seconds of footage. The family was visibly disturbed. The silence in that room was thick, broken only by the occasional sigh, the shifting of bodies, and the helpless murmurs of disbelief. How could this have happened? How could it have ended this way? Family members watched him closely, their concern mounting with every passing minute. "Are you okay?" his lawyer, Clyde Bennett, asked gently, his voice filled with quiet concern. But Rodney didn't respond. He couldn't. The shock, the horror, the disbelief were too much. And when the video ended, Rodney didn't speak. He just sat there, staring, as though the world around him had ceased to exist. His family knew something had to be done. They had witnessed his emotional collapse in real time, and the rawness of his reaction was undeniable. "He's not in his right mind," his sister said, her voice filled with worry. But even in his state of devastation, Rodney knew one thing: he needed to leave. At 10:30 a.m., after the video had ended and the silence was almost unbearable, Rodney stood up slowly. He couldn't stay in that room any longer. His family gathered around him, trying to steady him as he left the police station. He had left his car behind, too distraught, too broken to drive. They all piled into another vehicle, driving him away from the scene of the crime. But the question that lingered in the air was impossible to ignore. How could they make sense of what had just unfolded? Hours later, Rodney returned to the station. The grief was still there, hanging over him, but there was something else too. A feeling of urgency, of desperation. At 12:30 p.m., Rodney arrived back at the police station alone. His family, worried about his mental state, had followed at a distance. They watched him as he pulled into the parking lot, getting out of his car with a purposeful stride. He wasn't just retrieving his vehicle, something else had taken root in his mind, something that couldn't be undone. Around 1 p.m., Rodney crossed over into the intersection of Martin Luther King Drive and Burnett Woods Drive. There, standing in the middle of the intersection, was Deputy Larry Henderson, 57, directing traffic for the University of Cincinnati's graduation ceremony. Henderson, a retired sheriff's deputy, was simply doing his job, wearing his uniform, standing on the street corner, managing the flow of traffic. But for Rodney, it was no longer about the events that led up to this moment. The anger and confusion had taken over. Rodney accelerated, his car speeding toward Henderson. There were no other cars in front of him, no obstructions in his path. He crossed over multiple lanes, aimed directly at the deputy, and then, without hesitation, hit the gas. The impact was immediate and brutal. Deputy Henderson was struck, his body launching into the air as though it were nothing more than a rag doll. He was thrown several feet before crashing into a metal utility pole on the corner of the intersection. Witnesses, including those in nearby vehicles, couldn't believe what they were seeing. One of the investigators later explained that there were no signs of Rodney trying to stop, slow down, or even steer away from Henderson. There were no skid marks, the investigator confirmed. No attempt to brake or avoid the deputy. Rodney's actions were intentional. It was deliberate. Rodney's grief had transformed into something far more dangerous. It was no longer about mourning his son. It was about retaliation. Deputy Henderson, an innocent man who had no involvement in Ryan Hinton's death, had been chosen as the target in Rodney's violent quest for vengeance. Henderson was simply doing his job, but for Rodney, that no longer mattered.
Recently retired sheriff's deputy is dead after police say a driver intentionally hit him. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Tricia Mackey.
And I'm Rob Williams. Cincinnati police say the driver is the father of an 18-year-old who was shot and killed by police yesterday.
Cincinnati police say the father of the 18-year-old who was shot and killed by Cincinnati police on Thursday was driving the car that hit and killed a deputy Friday afternoon. Rodney Hinton Jr. is now charged with aggravated murder for the deputy's death.
Send medical. Send medical. We need this shut down right now. Officer down, officer down.
Cincinnati police say the deputy was directing traffic ahead of UC's graduation ceremony when he was struck by a vehicle entering the intersection. It happened around 1 p.m. at the intersection of Martin Luther King Drive and Burnett Woods Drive near UC's campus.
Within minutes of the crash, law enforcement agencies in Cincinnati had been alerted. Police officers from various units rushed to the scene, taking charge of the investigation. While the investigation was underway, medical personnel worked tirelessly to save Deputy Henderson. But despite their best efforts, it was clear that his injuries were too severe. He was pronounced dead at UC Medical Center shortly after the collision. His life had been taken in a senseless act, and the community began to feel the weight of the tragedy. Meanwhile, Rodney's fate was already sealed. Law enforcement tracked him down just after the incident. Officers, along with deputies from the Clermont County Jail, took him into custody without incident. Rodney Hinton was brought to the police department for questioning by Cincinnati detectives investigating Deputy Henderson's death. Afterward, he was transported to jail, having been charged with aggravated murder.
We're going to get you where you're going, okay?
Can you stand up for me, sir? I'll put this around your waist.
Can you get nobody let me in? I didn't really just showed up. I had to go all the way upstairs and get Gregory's bag. Okay, call me. I was ringing buzzers and nothing.
Are you able to stand on your own?
Try. Walked up here.
Here, use this hand to hold you. I'm gonna put this hand in a cuff.
Hinton appeared somewhat disoriented as officers and deputies worked to transfer him to officials from a nearby agency. "I'm going to place this hand in the cuff," one of the officers said.
Yeah, I'm gonna put this hand in a cuff. Alright, I'm gonna put this other hand in a cuff. I'm gonna double lock him, okay? Need you to rotate this right around. You're gonna pinch him. Alright.
I gotta double lock your ankles as well, so you got your. You're fine.
Oh.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
You gotta make a fear.
Shall I have anything?
You know, this one's not working, so. But either button. Either button. You say you're good. No, I was looking at you.
Oh, that's for bounce at the bottom.
I grab this right.
Yeah.
The deputies then placed Hinton into the van for transport to the jail in the nearby Claremont County, then for his court hearing.
Inside the courtroom, a wall of deputies, colleagues of Larry Henderson's, lined the courtroom. As Hinton was led out of court, he muttered something to the deputies that sounds like going to be gone forever.
However, inside the courtroom, a line of deputies, all colleagues of Larry Henderson, stood as Rodney Hinton was escorted out. As he was leaving, he quietly muttered something that sounded like, "going to be gone forever." While it was clear he was saying, "gone forever," the exact words he spoke were unclear. The president of the Fraternal Order of Police, FOP for Cincinnati, was informed that Hinton had said the deputy would be gone forever while looking at the deputies. Afterward, Hinton was transported back to Clermont County Jail. But that's not all. During the court hearing, Rodney Hinton claimed he faced intimidation from the police officers. He asserted that the presence of over 30 officers surrounding him was meant to intimidate him, further escalating his emotional distress.
WCPO 9 News reporter Connor Steffen shows you why Rodney Hinton thinks they violated his civil rights.
Good morning, Mr. Hinton.
In the lawsuit, Rodney Hinton Jr. claims this scene at his arraignment and this scene during his bond hearing amounted to a coordinated effort by law enforcement to intimidate him.
He was walking out and how the whole precinct seemed to be in the courtroom.
We spoke with Antoinette Holloway. She isn't a licensed attorney, but filed the complaint on Hinton Jr.'s behalf. He's representing himself in the matter.
So when you got him behind closed doors, we don't know if he's eating. We don't know what's going on in there.
In the 5-page complaint, Hinton Jr., who is accused of intentionally running down Deputy Larry Henderson, says his civil rights were violated during his May 2nd arrest. He also claims officers used excessive force, resulting in visible injuries.
The morning of May 6th, 2025, was tense as Rodney Hinton Jr. arrived for his bond hearing. Before the session even started, a brief moment of chaos erupted inside the courtroom. Rodney's brother attempted to speak with him, disrupting the usual court proceedings.
Bennett, at the prior hearing before today.
Have a seat. Have a seat.
Have a seat, sir. Sit down.
Was that the defendant's blood brother?
Not to my knowledge, Your Honor, no. No.
Okay.
Once things calmed down, Rodney was brought back to the courtroom.
Thank you. Is there a case that's going to be called?
Your Honor, Rodney Hinton.
Thank you. Mr. Bennett, at the prior hearing before today.
Have a seat. Have a seat.
Have a seat, sir. Sit down.
Then investigator narrated the timelines of the incidences.
So based on witness statements as well as the video, the vehicle accelerated quickly, proceeded eastbound, crossed into the oncoming lanes of traffic when there was no longer traffic to obstruct his travel, crossed into the oncoming lanes of traffic, went to the left of those little stanchions that are in the middle of the roadway, into the oncoming lanes, through the intersection, directly at where Deputy Henderson was standing, struck Deputy Henderson and the metal utility pole on the northeast corner of the intersection.
Okay. Were there any evidence of skid marks?
No, there were no indications at any point that he tried to brake, stop, or otherwise avoid Deputy Henderson.
And is that the conclusion that our accident reconstructionists have come to at this point?
At this time, yes.
Okay. And does it appear from your review of the video that he headed straight for Deputy Henderson?
Yes.
Okay. And did any of the multiple witnesses that you spoke to and the people that were in the vehicles that were surrounding him, the people that were on scene, did anyone indicate that any attempt to slow down or deviate his path straight to Deputy Henderson?
No, everybody said that he accelerated and was traveling at a high rate of speed all the way up until the time that he struck Deputy Henderson.
Rodney's attorney, Clyde Bennett, wasted no time in addressing the court. His main argument was that Rodney was not in his right mind when the tragic events unfolded. Bennett filed for a mental competency hearing, emphasizing that Rodney's actions were driven by overwhelming grief and emotional turmoil after witnessing the body camera footage of his son's death. According to the defense, this wasn't a clear-headed decision, but rather a chaotic response to a father's unimaginable loss.
To offer on behalf of the Hinton family and myself, prayers to the Hinton family, prayers to the family of Larry Henderson, the fallen deputy, and I thank the court for having a fair assembly in the courtroom today. With that, I'd like to ask you a few questions, not a lot, okay? Do you know the mental history of Mr. Hinton?
No, I do not know detailed mental history.
Right. Do you know whether or not he's had any medically documented infirmities or conditions? Do you know that? You don't, do you?
No, I do not.
You also don't know his state of mind at the time of the incident near Burnham Woods and Martin Luther King Jr. Drive. You don't know that either, do you? You think he intentionally did it?
And the evidence, yes.
Yeah. Are you familiar with acts of someone that is not in their right mind when they commit a criminal act? Acts of, well, you object to that? Okay. You don't know whether or not he was in his right mind at the time that he encountered Deputy Henderson.
I would object again, Your Honor.
Well,
asked and answered a couple times.
It's a different question. Judge, one of the factors with respect to the Ohio Revised Code and detaining a person with no bond is his mental condition. And in making that opinion about whether or not it's intentional, you need to know the mindset or the mens rea of the person that you're claiming intended to do this. Was he in his right mind? That's relevant with respect to your bond determination.
I'll sustain the objection.
I'm not saying that my client didn't try to intend to do this. That's not my position. One more question. You don't know his mindset at the time of the accident.
Like I stated previously, with the facts and circumstances surrounding it, him leaving our office, he was emotionally distraught, and they were concerned about him driving.
However, when the judge inquired if Rodney wished to speak, his attorney promptly responded with a no.
You do recognize that under the statute that the court must allow the defendant to make a statement at this hearing if he wishes.
That is my understanding, and that's a right I don't wish to exercise on behalf of my client. I don't want him to speak.
Is that right, Mr. Hinton? All right, thank you so much.
Meanwhile, the prosecution wasted no time in laying out the severity of the crime. Rodney Hinton Jr. was charged with aggravated murder, and the prosecutors were firm in discussing the possibility of seeking the death penalty. They pointed to Ohio's laws on capital punishment, outlining how Rodney's act of killing Deputy Larry Henderson could potentially fall under those provisions. But that's not all. They also go over his former criminal history.
So, Your Honor, in 2017, there was a domestic violence charge where the defendant pled guilty of disorderly conduct. In 2019, there was an assault conviction out of Hamilton County. And then I believe there was an assault conviction out of Middletown from 2023 and an aggravated menacing conviction out of Middletown from that same court.
The courtroom was filled with tension as the defense pressed hard for Rodney to receive a fair chance at bond, citing his fragile emotional state and the need for proper mental health evaluation.
What I would like to do, I want to make certain that this young man is treated as a mentally ill person and not as a cop killer. I don't think he was a cop killer. I think he was not in his right mind. And I think he should be treated like any other mentally ill person that commits a crime under the auspices, control, and authority of a mental defect in a condition. That's what we have in this case. Strong family ties.
The focus was on his mental illness plea, with Bennett arguing that Rodney's actions were a direct emotional reaction to the loss of his son and not a premeditated decision. After hearing both sides, the judge delivered the ruling. No bond was granted, and Rodney was ordered to remain in jail until the trial. The court set a trial date for January 2026, leaving everyone to wait for the legal proceedings to unfold. However, as the case unfolded, it quickly went viral, igniting a firestorm of opinions across social media platforms. Many users rallied behind Rodney Hinton, expressing support and justifying his actions as a grieving father who had been pushed to the edge by the tragic loss of his son. For these individuals, Rodney's act of running down Deputy Henderson was seen not as murder, but as an act of revenge, a father's desperate, emotional response to the unjust shooting of his child.
And mind you, the kid is only 16 years old. You know, they said he had a gun. This is what they said, but in that picture, it looked like he was running away, so I don't see the threat. But sad as it may sound, when this happened, they actually show his father the video of them unaliving his son, and that's what led to this. As you can see, it's a bunch of officers, it's a bunch of them in the courtroom surrounding the father while he's in an orange jumpsuit. Now, why is this father in an orange jumpsuit? Police didn't shoot him. You might ask, right? Because the very next day, he took justice in his own hands and went and unalived a police officer.
However, there was another side to the conversation, one that firmly condemned his actions. Critics decried the deliberate killing of an innocent officer, pointing out the lack of any justifiable cause for taking the deputy's life. This divided reaction created a stark line between those who sympathized with Rodney's grief and those who believed his actions were unforgivable. The racial dynamics of the case became especially prominent as the discussions unfolded. Social media users, often split along racial lines, began to frame the situation within the broader context of racial injustice and police brutality. Black users, in particular, pointed to the history of police violence against African Americans and the systemic issues that often led to such violent encounters, which fueled further conversations about whether Rodney's anger and subsequent actions could be understood within this context. Meanwhile, others questioned the notion of racial bias, arguing that Rodney's act of violence was not about race, but about personal revenge, leading to even more contentious debates.
This law says they got immunity. Well, they're not immune anymore. And Rodney King is sending the message and had the courage to carry out that which we got in our minds and didn't have the courage. But I'm telling you, we're saying he ain't standing by himself. Can I get an amen? Amen. And see, now, they say that they are going to use a justice system because they are concerned and they might want to kill Rodney for avenging his son. We here to say, no, sir. No, sir. No, sir. Now you do that, other things are gonna happen. No justice, no peace. No justice, no peace. No justice, no peace. It's our house. Whose house? Our whose house? Our whose house? Our whose house? Say his name. Rodney Hinton. 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 And we're not gonna only say his name, we're gonna protect his body. Don't kill that man. Did y'all hear what I said? No, it ain't gonna be a race war, it's gonna be against the system. Cause you got people that look like me and you that's in the system doing the same damn thing. Break down. Who? Power. Break down. Who? Power. Break down. Who? Power. 2 times. Break down. Who? Whose house? Our house. Whose house? Our house. Whose house? Our house. Who's got the power? We got the power. Who's got the power? We got the power. Who's got the power? We got the power. Say his name. Rodney. Say his name. Rodney. Say his name. Rodney. Now watch this. Watch this. The whole world know who Rodney Hinton Jr. is. We done seen this picture. We done seen him on the TVs. The whole world know who his father is and what he did. The whole world know the police officer that he killed. Have anybody out here, all these thousands of people, have anybody seen the shooter? No.
Do we have the shooter's name?
No.
Do we see the shooter's face?
No.
Is he passed all those ITDs?
No.
Is that by mistake?
No.
Who's got the power?
We got the power.
Who's got the power?
We got the power.
That's why we out here today demanding answers. Demanding transparency. What we doing?
Fight back.
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 365. Yes, sir.
As the discussion spread, certain videos and clips started gaining significant traction, pushing the narrative in various directions. One video showing Rodney in court surrounded by dozens of deputies was particularly powerful. The caption, "He's not alone," sparked further debate, with viewers commenting on the apparent racial tension in the room, noting the conspicuous presence of so many officers and how it might reflect an attempt to intimidate him. Some users felt this was an unfortunate but telling display of the challenges Rodney would face in the legal system.
It was brief, but it was powerful. He appreciates our people standing with our people.
The group held this town hall Monday night to organize next steps in support of Hinton Jr. About 40 people showed up, including 24-year-old CJ Robinson.
It could be me next week, you know, and I can only imagine if I was killed unjustly, what my parents would do.
Robinson says he wants police held accountable for the deadly shooting of Hinton Jr.'s son, Ryan Hinton. Prosecutors say Hinton Jr. watched body camera video of the incident hours before the crash that killed Henderson.
A sorry, a public statement, you know, there needs to be some consequence.
Hinton Jr. could face the death penalty if he's convicted.
In particular, a viral TikTok video began to circulate widely, amassing over 20,000 likes. This video, presented from a sympathetic angle, depicted Rodney as a mourning father who had lost all sense of reason in his grief, painting him as a victim of systemic oppression. The video's content played into the narrative that Rodney's actions were the product of years of frustration and racial inequality, with many commenters echoing support for him. Meanwhile, another viral post took an even more radical stance, labeling Rodney a hero, a man who took justice into his own hands after his son was gunned down. This video received widespread approval and further fueled the growing sense of sympathy toward Rodney, with viewers openly expressing their admiration for what they saw as a heroic act of retaliation against an unjust system. As these videos continued to circulate, the online debate intensified. Each new post seemed to deepen the divide, with some people chanting slogans like "No justice, no peace," and others calling for justice for the fallen officer, Deputy Henderson.
Here, we are united in grief as we reflect the life and service of Deputy Larry Henderson.
Exactly 1 week ago today, a 2016 Ford Focus embarked on a rage-fueled voyage of vengeance. The driver, a bitter and angry man whose name I will never speak.
Today, we are reminded that we, as we are called to service, we raise our hand. We swear the oath.
Wanted to show my support for all our law enforcement and fire department, everyone that serves the community.
He was a better person than he was a police officer, and that's saying a lot, because Larry was the best police officer that you could possibly find.
There is no doubt that on May 2nd, 2025, Larry took the place of another officer. He may have taken that place for me, or you, or anyone in this room.
To the citizens of Hamilton County, continue to stand behind the men and women who serve you. I've seen it. The waitress who brings cookies to the table paid for by a stranger. The heartfelt thank yous while on patrol. We notice, we remember, we need that.
I always felt so safe around him.
He was the type of guy that would do anything for you.
Each of us knowing in our hearts that we will never walk alone.
And also, the family of Rodney has something to say about this too.
It's obvious that this is still very fresh and very painful for them. We heard from attorneys representing the estate of Ryan Hinton, along with his own family, grandfather, grandmother, little sister, cousin. They wanted to share more about how they are remembering Hinton after his death. But the press conference began with attorneys offering condolences to the family of retired Hamilton County Sheriff's Deputy Larry Henderson. They'd consider his death another tragic loss. Family called the media here to speak on the life of Ryan Hinton, but also to raise questions after reviewing body camera footage from his death. Their main question is this: was the officer justified in using deadly force?
As I seen in the video about my grandson, I seen two scared people. I seen the officer scared, and I seen my grandson scared. So it's an unfortunate incident that happened. So that's all I seen. It was like, I didn't see the police there trying to kill. No. What I seen was two persons made a mistake. My grandson made a mistake of being there, and the officer, he was trying to get back to his family too.
We're also learning more new information tonight. Hinton's family says he attended Don High School before it shut down. He was not in school at the time of his death. Family and attorneys didn't dispute otherwise that Hinton was sitting in a stolen car or had a gun on him at the time of the incident. His cousin says, however, he should not have been in that stolen car because he was locked out of the house the night before.
I was asleep. Ryan, I'm so sorry. This was never supposed to happen to you. Ever. I'm so sorry, Ryan. I'm so sorry, Ryan. Just know he won't supposed to be there.
Like we said, a very, very emotional press conference that wrapped up about an hour ago. The family is asking the public not to rush to judgment. Their attorneys are reviewing every report and angle of the incident they can get their hands on. At that point, attorneys say they will announce what, if any, steps they will take.
So, what do you think about this case? If you were the judge, what would you have done? Was the police officer right to shoot? Was Rodney Hinton Sr.'s act of taking justice into his own hands justified? Or does it raise even more questions about the law, revenge, and the emotional toll of grief? Is this situation a matter of mental illness or pure passion driven by a father's overwhelming loss? These are tough questions, and there's no easy answer. The complexities of this case, from the tragic loss of Ryan Hinton to the events that followed, leave us questioning how far emotions should influence actions and the law. And in a case like this, can we ever truly separate passion from reason? We want to hear from you. What are your thoughts on the actions of the police officer, Rodney Hinton's emotional state, and how the justice system should respond in situations like these? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more. We'll continue to follow this case and bring you the latest updates.